Welcome everybody. We like to start things on time, so we will get started right away. We give a couple of minutes in the beginning just to, we know people are always. The purpose of this session is sort of baked into the title, so we'll get to that. Our goal here is to have really insightful conversations. Step away from what some of my colleagues will call the aspire to perspire conversations. Where we're just preaching, and instead focus on really practical ways in which we can do the things that we all want to do, which is to drive value for our organizations, drive value for our teams, drive value for ourselves in the process as well. So we'll go through a few slides at first, and then we'll sort of introduce my guest today, and then we'll find a way to make sure that we also get you guys to participate in the conversation. So think about it this way: we're in a room full of about 20 people, or 22, give or take. We're all trying to have just a really chill conversation, and we want to start with very quick introductions. So just go into the chat and type in a quick comment to say your name, your company, your role, your location. That way we have an idea of who's here. I mean, we can obviously see your name, so maybe you don't have to put your name. You can put company, location, maybe the role as well, and that also gives Ebenezer an idea of who we're talking to. So let's take a minute and do that. That also lets us know that we're speaking to humans, not bots. It's crazy how many AI note takers we have to remove from the call in the beginning. You join the call and there are more AI note takers than humans. So I think we're certainly in a different era. Well, good evening, Eben, or Ebenezer, as your name is officially said. How are you?
Good evening, Seni. I'm doing pretty well. Hope your day is going well.
It's going well. It's been a very busy week, but I think nowadays maybe that's a blessing given how things are turning in the world in general. So again, everyone, please, if you have a moment, just quickly put in your name, your LinkedIn, your name, your company, your location, just so we know who you are, your role. Also, if you are in a situation where you're able to turn on your video, even if it's for a few minutes in and out, please do so. I think from previous webinars we've had, it's always useful to get facial reactions, and it also just kind of helps us know that people are hearing what we're saying, and we can, if your eyebrows get raised, then we know that okay, maybe the point is not really landing well, then we can clarify. Hi Johnson, welcome. Thank you for joining from Lagos. Hi Joshua, thanks for joining. I think we have two leaders that have taken the lead there, so I guess others can also accompany them and share with us, and we'll get started. So that was sort of like just a quick fun thing to get everybody else involved. I'm hoping we'll see some more names on the slide. We can jump into the agenda now. So essentially we're going to go into a quick welcome, which is part of what we're doing now. We're going to introduce Talstack, then introduce Ebenezer, and then we'll go into the actual a very quick survey just to get a sense for how you guys think about the topic. We'll then go into the actual discussion itself. At the end, we'll leave room for Q&A. With the Q&A, what we're doing is we encourage people to either note your question somewhere so we can ask it, or literally put it in the chat. And then when we get through the conversation, we'll pick up questions in the chat. We'll also call on you to give us additional questions when we get there. So again, like I said, this is not meant to be a super formal context. It's meant to be more of a casual conversation, as if we were just in a room together having a chat, which is why we don't have 500 people here as well, right? And Ebenezer will give us the real deal when we get through that. So my team would sort of penalize me if I don't start by just introducing Talstack again. I know that not everyone on the call is familiar with the brand of the company. I'm sure most of you here have received that email from us at some point. But just to quickly recap, Talstack is the people management platform for high-performing teams, and our own sort of vision for our company is to help accelerate Africa's growth by enabling businesses to improve the productivity and engagement of their workforce at scale. In very simple terms, we want companies to be able to get higher ROI from their people, and we also want people to feel like they're able to drive value for the companies. We're trusted by leading brands. Obviously, the first one is probably familiar to you because that's Ebenezer's company, Cowrywise, and then brands like UAC, Meristem, PDVest, a bunch of others across industries. I think this is just to show you that we have companies that cut across sizes, stages, and sectors currently working with Talstack. Let's keep moving. The way our business works, there are really three core components for today. And I think we have someone that needs to be muted. Let me just check in on that. Or in the background, you can help me with that. So essentially, at scale, right, and sort of as you look at the long arc of time, Talstack is positioned to be your partner in really driving strategic people management. We don't want to be a system of record that says, oh yeah, this employee actually works here in our company. Great. That's really important. But for majority of the executives in the world today, in Nigeria, across Africa, and elsewhere in the world, the focus is really on how do we get more value for the business? How do we drive performance? How do we drive outcomes? And to do that, of course, the talent has to be enabled. So we will build many other modules in the future, but our core today is really about performance. And then with performance, how do we then begin to nail additional things? So there are really just three main things that we focus on at the moment. The first is how you turn strategy into action with goals. Again, most companies have a vision, they have some kind of overall plan, and then what happens is that plan is to get cascaded. And so Talstack provides you the platform through which you can break that overarching plan into smaller modules that different teams, departments, employees can then drive. So you can set clear goals across the company. You can drive execution in real time. And this is actually the management in performance management, is that day-to-day, week-on-week, looking at the goal, seeing where you are, engaging your team members, driving the execution, and then you can track progress in a way that's really simple. So it's essentially turn your strategy into execution, and then make sure that you're getting the right results proactively. So that's one of our offerings, is the goals module. The second offering we have is more around performance reviews. The goal, obviously, the outcome here is that this becomes a system of record that lets every employee in the company understand how they are viewed by their manager and by the company itself in terms of their performance more holistically. And so we enable you to launch 360-degree performance reviews, self-reviews, manager reviews, peer reviews, and output reviews in a single platform. You can add additional context, therefore you can get meaningful insights, not just a rating without substance. And the goal here is to help you drive people decisions. So you spend more time thinking through, what do I do with my talent? The people that are performing well, those that are maybe not performing, those that need some support. And you can then move from performance reviews to results as well. And the last thing we have is a learning platform. So most companies today will do some kind of training needs assessments at the beginning of the year, and then you identify areas where you want employees to improve. And then you spend the next several weeks trying to figure out what's the right vendor, what's the right curriculum, what's the pricing, how do we bring them on board? Is it in person? Is it virtual? All these different things. And from my understanding, it takes companies, anywhere up to 2 to 3 months. So the goal is to deliver training in January or February. You find out that it's April that you start doing it because of all the other things that get in the way. So we have a training platform as well that allows you to build learning paths right away. So you take performance reviews, you identify training gaps or skill gaps through that, or training needs. And then immediately you can jump on our learning platform and launch training programs for employees as quickly as within a day, right? So you can create content using ours plus yours, put some structure around it, and then track your impact. And that way you can connect learning directly to performance outcomes. So in a nutshell, we give you the goals, tracking, management, performance reviews, learning in one single platform. And hopefully when you onboard on Talstack eventually, you will appreciate that it all happens in one place. So with that out of the way, marketing team and sales team, please, I hope I've delivered for you guys. So now I can go on with the program about our guest. When you meet Ebenezer, you realize that he's a pretty simple man, but a simple man with a lot of force packed into one person. So as you can see, even his introduction is fairly simple, but in the subtitles there is a lot of impact created. So Ebenezer is AVP at People and Culture at Cowrywise. He actually just got promoted recently, so please join me in celebrating him for being recognized by his team and his company for all the amazing work. And we've actually gotten a chance to see some of that in real time. And so Ebenezer has been someone that has really raised the bar for Talstack, pushed us really hard, continues to push us, continues to raise the bar. And I think we're building an even better company thanks to having customers like him that we work with. He has over 10 years experience across reputable organizations like the Nigerian Stock Exchange, like the very well-known, PwC, and now at Cowrywise, and he leads basically the entire people function. Which I think if you spend any time at Cowrywise, you'll know that the people function has a super high bar, and is well appreciated inside the business as well. So we'll talk a bit more about the topic and everything else, but let's get the audience to participate. I mean, by the way, Ebenezer, did I miss anything from your introduction? Like, there's so much that could be said, and I know you wanted to keep it fairly short, but
Well, I think you've captured the most of it. I believe that many of us on this call even understand HR or even performance management more than I do. So yes, I'm just a bloody simple HR guy, right?
this is what I was saying earlier about the humility. So comes out clearly. And I guess for those who don't know Cowrywise, since I just marketed Talstack, for those who don't know Cowrywise, Cowrywise is a financial services platform where you can save, plan, and invest. That way you can make your Naira and your dollars go a long way and secure a financial future that's drives more prosperity for you. And Ebenezer, maybe there's a couple of additional words you want to add there, or did I get it right?
Yes, I mean, you've captured it perfectly, but I will always take every chance to talk about what we do at Cowrywise, because the goal is empowering people. How do we build wealth sustainably, right? And how do you build it comfortably as well? So from your phone, up on the web, I want to save, I want to invest, I want to buy stocks. Just think of Cowrywise as that partner that teaches you how money works and then gives you the platform to make your money work for you in a simple way.
There you have it. So let's find out from the room, what do you think why do you think most company and individual goals fail before Q2? And the actual research shows this. It is a problem in Nigeria, it's a problem in other African markets, it's a problem literally globally in the US, in Europe, elsewhere. People set goals, they get really excited, and then the year kicks off. Things happen, and then you look backward, end of Q1, end of Q2, and you realize that a lot of things have not actually happened the way they were meant to happen. So is there anyone here that feels like they have a lot of insights into why that happens? You can feel free to drop your comments in the chats. If you feel like very, very inspired by the spirit to speak as well, you can unmute yourself and we'll maybe take 1 or 2 people to speak, but otherwise we'll keep moving. So this is just something to think about, right? And I'm trying to prime everybody to think about what's your own opinion on why you think goals fail, and we'll talk through how the more important thing is we talk through how we prevent that from happening. I think all of us here have been in organizations where even the most basic goals or the most basic initiatives fail to happen, and our job is to basically just kind of talk through how you prevent that from happening. Like I said, this is meant to be a conversation, so don't let it be just Ebenezer and I speaking for the entire time and then we all go home. There'll be a chance to do a Q&A, but if before then you would like to opine or ask a question, either use the chat or just raise your hand using the hand raise button, and then we'll take your question or comment. So I'll introduce Eben a little bit more because I think context really matters. Before I joined Cowrywise, they didn't really have a defined performance management framework, right? So what that meant was, you didn't really have a good sense of like how performance management should work. What that also means is that people are executing on goals, but like, are you actually tracking them properly? Do you know who's delivering value for the company? If things are missed, how do you catch that? When you think about people's performance overall, how are you then taking what they've done and feeding it into their performance appraisals or performance reviews? And so that system wasn't well oiled. Ebenezer joined the company and he basically helped to drive initiatives that would see the company significantly improve its performance management system and framework. It allowed them to achieve their company-wide goals year on year by just creating a lot more visibility into what the goals were, driving accountability and ownership, and then actually helping them to manage that execution. And they have actually seen internally a dramatic improvement since Ebenezer joined the company in how they drive value. And also, I think beyond just the company's own goals, it allows employees to also set their own personal goals and achieve them. So an example that Ebenezer gave us that I thought was really interesting is like every couple of weeks, they're celebrating somebody who had put something on their own personal goals, and then the person has actually achieved it. If it's not CFA that the person has crushed, it's some other certification they've done, some other milestone they've reached. And so employees are then able to connect their own journey to the company's goals, because ultimately, for most people, driving value for your business typically involves you also creating value and learning and growing and advancing your own career. So I thought that was really, really interesting and exciting. Ebenezer will be able to speak to this a little bit more, but even he personally, as the head of HR, has been able to use the same sort of culture of performance management to accelerate his own career. And we talked about that, the promotion earlier. So that's like clear evidence for that. We're not going to throw around numbers, but I think last time we checked, there were a couple of million customers on Cowrywise today. And when he joined, that number was more in the hundreds of thousands. So that growth has been quite impressive. And, with that said, I think we'll just jump right into it. So Ebenezer, we've got a bunch of folks here. Like you said, some of them are experts. Some of them are maybe trying to figure this out. You spoke a lot about sort of like how you get executive level participation in performance. So maybe let's even start there, right? You joined a company, there wasn't really a ton of performance management in place. The company cared about performing, yes, but they didn't have that structure in place. What do you do to first and foremost even align executives on the importance, how you want to approach it, what their role is there, and how do we, how do we learn from that experience you had?
Okay, thanks, Seni. And before I go into that, good evening. Well, from here, I'm sure some of us are probably not in the same time zone. So, good evening from Lagos, Nigeria. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm looking forward to a rich conversation. I'm looking forward to participation from the people who have joined, questions, comments as well, so that we can all learn. So, how do you get executives to get interested in performance management, especially if things have been working through the chaos, right? It might be chaotic, but we are seeing the results, and of course, business leaders want to see value. So if we are seeing value, why do we need to spend time setting goals? Why do we need to spend time doing performance reviews? Why do we need to spend time doing all these things that might appear like they are taking time away from seeking the value?
Right.
But then again, it's not our role as people and culture or operations leaders or HR people to help the business see the value in that time you're taking away from those things that are supposed to be giving you value. So it's usually starts. So maybe if I pick the Cowrywise example, right? When you have willing leaders who want to see and make things work, who understand best practice, the slightest chance they get to practice best practice, then they, go ahead with it. So I think that's the case with Cowrywise. We have founders who have seen what very good means, who also understand, probably not from first-hand experience, but from desire, what it means if you don't put the best systems in place to get things done. So before I go to your question, I'm just trying to connect the reality as Cowrywise to how it was easy to get our leaders to see the value of these HR processes, that take time away from the business. So the leaders understand that, yes, we have an idea. Yes, people can build wealth. Yes, there's a lot of gap in financial knowledge in Africa and in Nigeria specifically. If you even look at Nigeria by different zones, that problem gets worse. So we have a platform, we have a product, or we have products, we have a system that helps to solve that. How do we then make sure that people can begin to put that system to use? So how do we grow? How do we scale? And in that growth, they also understood that the people in the business power the growth. You spoke to growth earlier, right? And how people need to grow so that the business can grow. But one of my very first conversations with our CEO when I joined Cowrywise, Razak was very specific on the company needs to grow fast. It is growing fast, but people have to grow faster. Because when people are growing, the people make up the business. The people build the products. They get better. They build a better product. So it was easier for me to convince the leaders that we need to take time off these things that we're doing to design systems that help us to envision what the next phase of success is like, and then helps us to design little targets that we need to achieve every now and then that takes us closer to that next phase vision. But to people who might not be as lucky as I am to have that kind of leader, I would say businesses will always respond to value. So you're doing 10 today. If you take 2 hours off this to put this and this in place, you can do 50 as against 1.5. And that is, I mean, 1.5 as in 15.
Mm.
So how do we make things move faster? How do you get more for and from the business? I think every business leader wants the best for that business. So they will always listen to value. So it's about how do we communicate the value of having these systems, these processes in place to help them see that they're actually good for the business. And if they are now one step further in caring for people, how that also helps people to grow, and the long-term effects that also comes to the business from the people growing.
I mean, I think you've actually largely answered the question, and some people will be in a situation as well where the leadership understands it and it just requires them to go and make a case. And there's some that would be in a situation where maybe there's a bit of convincing to be done. And I think what you've articulated, which is just remember that the leader or the CEO, whoever it might be, cares about something. And if you can tie this initiative to that thing, then it becomes a much more, amenable conversation. Before I get into the weeds of how we actually do it, right? One thing I noticed, so we've been speaking to a lot of HR people. I think I've spoken to more HR people, more HR leaders in the last 3 years than, probably most people in the world get to do. And one consistent theme I always see over and over again is most times HR people seem understaffed and overworked. And so they have so much going on at all times. How did you carve, so, you have executive level buy-in, okay, great. How did you carve out the space? Like you have all the other things that need to get done. How do you carve out the space to launch, a project that has to do with, performance management, get the right inputs you need, get the right support you need, make the time for yourself, and not end up dropping the ball on other things that are considered important and pressing? How do you manage that and balance that?
Okay. Very interesting question. So how do you prioritize such that you can take time and not let many things slip through the cracks?
Or maybe you let things slip through the cracks. I don't, well, like in real life, in practice, is it through the cracks, and you agree with the, how do you handle that?
Yeah, so I mean, it's pretty normal if once in a while something, maybe it doesn't get done when you said it was going to get done. And managing that is a whole different conversation. But I believe that, and I was going to come back to this. I didn't know that you even get to this early, right? That one of the very important things in setting goals, since that's what the topic was about, is around having your priorities right. And the way I think about it is, or this is how I manage that personally, is for every quarter, for every month, for every week, for every day, what's that one thing that if every other thing fails, this one thing must be done? And how do I get that thing done faster? And then when I can get that thing done, I begin to look at what's the next one thing, right, that must be done. So I think prioritizing rights is a very critical thing. And what I did when I joined Cowrywise was, of course, as a new HR leader, was to take time to understand the business. Because I think in almost everything HR or business in general, when you have a group of people, you cannot but talk about culture.
Yeah.
So doing that, taking that time to understand Cowrywise, what our culture is like, what we value, the behaviors that power our everyday, the traits you see in those behaviors, helps me to also understand how to connect with people. Because you would find that in setting goals, yes, executive buy-in is like the very first thing, but buy-in with every stakeholder, even those employees who set the goals, are very important. So the first thing I did was to understand the culture, understand what value means here. In some places is what do you get? In some places is what do you get to give? Because they see a bigger vision. So that's knowledge sort of helps to communicate the value. But what I did at Cowrywise was to first understand what we are doing here. So it took me like the first few weeks, few months actually, to understand, this is how I should think about performance management here. And I began to have more clarity around, okay, by this time, we should be able to have this put in place. By this time, we can have our first goal set. By this time, our first performance reviews. But it was more around what's that one thing. And for that first 2-3 months, that one thing was how do we manage performance for sustainable growth?
So you already linked performance and sustainable growth, which obviously every CEO wants to hear about that connection, right? Or wants to hear about whatever connects to sustainable growth. And so I can already see that linking happening there. So, and I would say it's probably quite similar for me as well in how, in the past I've approached, like in my own situation, I was more of an operational leader, working in partnership with HR to implement, performance management. And I think it's pretty similar to what you've said, which is every organization has a unique DNA and personality. And you cannot just transpose what works in this one place to another. You can transpose the framework itself, but you can't transpose the how, like what's important, what behaviors will drive, the right rewards. And so I think taking that time to observe and see also gives you credibility, because then people can say, when you're speaking, you're using the language of the company that you're in, as opposed to previous language that makes you like an alien to them, right? So I think I actually align with a lot of what you said. So we're going to jump into the practical side, very quickly, so that we use our time valuable. You've seen the difference between what it was like prior, where yes, maybe you are hitting some goals, maybe you're not, but things kind of are working. And then you've seen what it's like after, when you're like, okay, this system we've put in place actually makes a big difference. I don't want to focus on the actual system or software or tool yet. I think that's a different conversation. But just the idea of the process itself, not like tactically, what system did you implement? Are you setting goals once a year? Do you set 10-year goals, then come back and turn into 1 year milestones? Is it quarterly? Is it weekly? Kind of how are you guys running that system? What can we learn from that?
Okay, so our approach to setting goals. So I'll say for us, let me start from Cowrywise. Maybe I can finish up with something more general. So currently at Cowrywise, we set goals at the beginning of the year. That's at the individual level. But before we set that, the business has looked back at the previous years, has looked at its objectives for the new year, has come up with 2 or 3 max North Stars that, or well, one North Star with 2 or 3 things that would help us to drive that, and we're all clear. So we start the year with the knowledge of this is one thing the business wants to do, and these are numbers 2 and 3. And when we know that, we then go into our different teams. So the managers of the different teams also think around, what can my team in our role do to achieve this one thing, and then number 2 and 3 that the business wants to do. So for us in people and culture is, how do we power that through our systems, through our policies, through our processes, through interventions, initiatives, all of that. For the finance person is, how do we also achieve what the business wants to do, from that angle. For the engineering guys building the software, they're also thinking about that one goal. So we're all trying to achieve the same thing, but we're contributing towards it from our different angles, from our different areas of focus. Then each person then works with their manager to also connect with what the company wants to do as a whole and what their team wants to do. So in the finance team, my role is maybe operations. So we want to pay out money, we want to receive money. How do I do that in a way that it helps us to achieve the number one thing that the company wants to do? As a product manager as well, I'm doing my product management in a way that we are both trying to achieve that one thing along with what my team wants to do. So you will find that the everyday actions are different, but they connect as you go to a higher level. So at the very top, we're all working towards the same thing. In terms of approach, right, if I now leave Cowrywise context to go into something more general, a lot of factors would affect how you, or even when you set goals. And I forgot to add, as Cowrywise, our goals I said at the beginning of the year, but they are fluid. So I said I would do X, Y, Z by March. I've done it by February. What else can I do? Or I said I would do X, Y, Z by March. It looks like because of ABC, March needs to be April, and it is valid. I've tested it. I've checked all the different alternatives. It needs to be April. I can have a conversation around how this can't be March again, and it is now April, and we're aligned. So that ongoing engagement around the goals is very critical. So back to the general one, I think culture affects many things. Your industry would affect many things. I mean, if I'm on the line in a factory that makes, say, shoes, and the system has been set to produce design A of shoes. I just have to make sure that the system gets the input and produces design A of shoes. So maybe my goals will have to be around how many shoes can we make today realistically. If I'm the floor manager and we're working shifts, I'm thinking how many shoes can my entire shift make today. You would find that maybe at the higher level, at the business level, the goals are not about the number of shoes. Maybe they can be, but it might be about revenue, it might be about profits, expansion, it might be about different things. So the nature of the work itself will determine the way you set goals. If I'm in a mature business where we've been doing these things for the past 160 years, everything has been tested. We know everything there is to know about this. Maybe I don't have room to set challenging goals. Maybe even if I do, they might be less about the output, but more about me.
But yeah.
Yes, so you will find that there are a lot of factors, a lot of conditions that affect how you set goals, how you review goals, when you review goals, and all of that.
That's amazing. There's a lot of things to unpack there. One of the ones I was going to ask was, you said the company starts off with, one primary goal, and then they have maybe number 2 and 3. In sort of speaking to a lot of companies about our goals module, I've seen companies that have 10 company level goals, and I usually try and say to them, this feels like a lot. I don't think even your employees will know how to connect what they're doing to 10 things, right, at the company level. And then, of course, just then explodes as you cascade it down. To what extent is that a CEO level decision that is made around the one goal? Was it always that way, or is something that you guys migrated to after some time? Just want to understand a bit more how you got there.
Yeah, still part of what makes me a lucky HR leader, right? I always say 2 things whenever I talk about Cowrywise. The fact that my business leaders care a lot about people, and the fact that they've experienced the world, so they know what good is. So those have always been simple at the highest level. We want people to be able to connect to it easily. We want them to wake up from sleep and know that this is what we are doing, even if everything else fails. We are focused on this. And yes, you're right. When you're beginning to have lots of goals and people cannot have focus on what their priority is per time, the reality of achieving those goals begins to shake. So lucky us at Cowrywise, our leaders understand simplicity. And if you use the Cowrywise product, you would find that a lot of the things that we actually build are built to be simple to use as well. From even things as simple as the kind of words we use to describe certain things. So that focus on keeping things simple also helps us even when it comes to setting goals.
And the final point you made around how we set, when it comes to setting goals, another thing I've seen a lot of times is the leadership may understand how to set goals. Maybe even the HR person may understand how to set goals. I've been speaking to a lot more CEOs and head of operations as well lately, and even CEOs about performance and goal setting. And there's a bit of like nervousness around, does the layer below me at the manager level, for example, and even employees more broadly, do they even know how to set the right goals? Are they able to set goals that make sense? Who's going to do all the work of teaching them all that? What's been your journey arriving at a point where, across the company, people can set goals well? And yeah, I guess what's again the learning there about how we can improve that? Because we know that, again, being able to set the goals is what is able to drive the outcomes, right?
Yeah, right. And I think that like many things in HR, so I always say that HR is one of those fields where everything connects. If your recruitment is very solid, onboarding becomes very easy. So it can be solid without too much effort as well. Performance management becomes easy. Goal setting, reviews, everything just connects. And what you find is just like HR is connected across the value chain, is almost everything you would do in a business that has more than one layer is hinged on the quality of leadership. So you have a business where the CEO or the founders or the directors are very solid, well exposed. They understand the best frameworks, the best principles, but that business has not invested in the next level. In the execution, in the cascading, everything dies. And then you begin to wonder, we have these solid leaders who are making this big money. Why are we not achieving the goals, right?
Yeah.
So what has happened with us at Cowrywise is we began from where we were, and this is very good for growing companies, right? Where we knew that we're moving to a new way of doing things. So the way we would set goals now is not how it was the very first time we set the goals. We're still learning. And once we began to set goals, we let the managers at the highest level first set goals with their own direct reports. Then those people with the experience they've had with them, they said the best way to learn is by doing, right? So you've been part of a goal setting process. Your manager has queried certain decisions you've made around your goals. They've helped you to refine certain things. They've given you things to think about, to consider as to why some things should not be 10, but should be 2. Why something should not be 7, but should be 9. So where they think you can do more, you've seen the logic, you've seen the process, you've seen the quality of questions, then you can then also take that to your direct reports and replicate the quality of leadership you've received to those that report to you. So we've sort of been learning and especially the process over time. But I think the sweet spot is when you get to a point where just like the goals are set from the top,
Yeah.
then you need to tier it. So the business leaders set leaders for the entire business. Those same business leaders set goals with the leaders that report to them. So for me, I'm meeting with the CEO to discuss not just my personal goals, but with a larger focus on the goals of the people and culture team. So how do the leaders expect HR to drive that our number one goal? Then when I meet with my team as well, I'm also helping them to understand this goal that I've agreed with the business leaders. How do we in our different roles within the team drive these goals? And how do I, as well as the leader of the team, help my team to drive those goals? So you would see that the quality of leadership affects a lot of things, and goal setting is not excluded from that.
Interesting. I mean, there's obviously there's two sides or two schools of thought on this topic. I've met a decent number of people that say, actually, I had a call just 2 days ago where someone literally said this to me. The CEO sets the goal, and then you're aligned to the goal or not aligned to the goal. They set the goal for the people as well on the team. And I was trying to kind of coach her through. I'm not sure because I don't know if that drives ownership for people. Sounds like you're saying very much you shouldn't do that. It should be collaborative, and then you still want to get the company's perspective reflected in the goals, but not just like you give the person the goal and say go and do it. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, so there are factors affecting that, but the industries where I have practiced, the nature of the work, I spoke about culture, nature of the work, your role, all of that's playing roles. The industries I've practiced have been industries where you are able to do, I didn't want to say anything technical, but allow me to say management by objective here, where there's that participatory leadership in deciding what gets done. You might be in places where the nature of the work means that what's done will be dictated to you. Like that, my example around a shoe factory. The design was not decided by you. Whether the factory stays open or not wasn't yours to decide. What you know is I'm supposed to be here for 9 hours today. All the inputs are there. The machine is there. The power is on. And somebody has told me that on an average, I should be able to do 10 shoes per hour. So in my 9 hours today, I'm doing 90 shoes. Whether that's the best approach, I cannot tell. But it shouldn't be that in roles that have that flexibility, in cultures designed such that the people that are doing the work have control, have freedom, like we call it here. We say our culture is hinged on freedom and responsibility. And those people can then have a say in what gets done. But I will close this by saying that research has also shown that when people have a say in what they are doing, as again, it's just been handed down to them, there's more ownership and they're likely to execute more and execute faster.
So I think that's another principle there around, again, if the goal is to prevent yourself from not hitting the goals, get that person to take ownership by having them be able to give you their own opinion on the goal as well. You might still end up giving them sufficient feedback where the goal lands where you want the goal to be, but that participatory process of discussing it and dialoguing it and hashing it out, there's a cognitive thing it does to the brain in terms of driving alignment and ownership and proactiveness, right? Which I think I agree with. So now you've walked us through at the leadership level, getting alignment there. How you then create that culture of goal focus and goal achievements. You've given us a bit of a tactical around how do you actually the frequency of setting the goals and all that, right? What do you do to create a culture of not ownership in terms of, okay, I own this goal and therefore let me go and work on it, because I think we're speaking a bit about it right now, but a culture of consequence management is what I want to just call it, for lack of a better term. Something I've heard so many times, and I've also experienced this before in the past, is there are places where as an HR person or as an operations leader, because on this call I think we have a few of both, you're probably not the final decision maker. You're not the CEO of the company, right? So in some cases, yes, you may have autonomy to do hire and fire and reward and punishment, but in some cases you don't have full autonomy on that. If you're an HR person, you can't fire people unless they're on your team. You're basically working with other people. If you're an operations person, you might see things, because some operations people see cross-functional view as well. You might see things that are happening in a different domain, and you can't act on it independently. So what have you done, and how would you approach this idea of sort of consequence management, where people might set goals and then it's like, yeah, I put it on paper and it's nice to have, and I tried my best, it didn't work out, oh well. How do you drive a culture where people are saying, I need to hit my goal, because if I don't hit my goal, either something bad happens or I feel a certain way, and if I do hit my goal, then something good happens, whether it's personal for me or for the company or whatnot. But yeah, just broadly speaking, how do you do that?
Okay, so driving that sense of ownership, but from the angle of reward for whether goals are achieved or not achieved.
Whether it's reward, punishment, or but just essentially, like, people shouldn't just put goals on paper and then Q2 comes around and it's like, yeah, we didn't achieve it. I'm so sorry. I did my best. Let's move on.
Yeah, I think there are many factors that can be at play when we've observed this. I mean, by we now, I mean both in my experience here and even mostly outside Cowrywise. Right. I would say that first off, what's the idea of? I mean, it begins from that process of setting the goals. Like I said, many factors at play here. Let me pick one. If I'm able to set my goals in a way that I'm not just constrained to set goals for what the business needs, I'm able to set goals for myself. So maybe I want to go to football training school. I've worked in a place where someone who is in HR had part of their goals and the company signed off on that goal, is that they want to learn fashion design in their spare time. So that person felt supported by the business. And there was a time when we had to manage a recruitment process on the weekend, and they could say, hey, I have paid for this expensive class because I had this goal and you agreed to it. And the director was very to say, oh, I'm sorry, you can be excused for this, but how else can you play a role in this project within the time that you agreed that you would be at work? So, and we found that that person was doing a lot more work, even though they had a goal that seemed to be distracting, in quotes, from what the team wanted to do. So do people feel supported? Do people feel like this company cares about me? Or do they just feel like it is a job? Let me just do my job and then get my pay and then go home. The sense of reward or punishment, as the case may be as well. In theory, right, every performance management process starts with the planning and ends with the reward. So if I achieve what I said I will achieve, what's the benefit for me? That's why people do things like profit sharing, bonus payments, all of those things. The same way, if I do not achieve it, and that's not because the factors to enable me were there, it was just because I didn't put in enough effort or I wasn't serious enough to get it done, despite being able to. What is the punishment? Well, I choose to use the word reward for both of them, whether it's positive or negative. So what is the reward for good behavior and what's the reward for bad behavior? You would find that even if you don't have a reward for bad behavior, if you just status quo, the desire to get the reward for the achieved outcome would motivate me to want to achieve it, whether we like it or not. Human beings are driven by that motive to protect self.
Mm.
If I stand to get something from achieving my goal, I will want to do it. So I can also feel the question to say, what happens in cases where someone has set very lovely goals, practical goals, simple goals, achievable goals, and smart goals in the full sense of it, and they achieved those goals, and there was no reward. Would the motivation be there for them to do the same thing, rinse, repeat next time? Or they're like, hey, you know what? I did this person did nothing. We are in the same boat. I'd rather just not put in the efforts to achieve that result. So I think it can go both ways, but it's around, do people feel recognized? Do they feel rewarded? Do they feel valued? And do they feel supported beyond, hey, it's a job. Let me do my job and go home.
Well, I was thinking while you're speaking, because I think it's really useful that you and I have both, spent a lot of our time working in Nigeria. Because typically when you say things like this, the reaction I'm sure some people have is like, oh yeah, okay, sure, yeah. This works in one fantasy country somewhere else, but in this if you go to Kenya, same thing, go to Ghana, same thing. And I want to like maybe push you there a little bit. So one of the things you mentioned was employees being able to set their own personal goals. I remember, at Andela previously, I had an executive assistant who, up until today, is probably one of the most effective people I've worked with. And like I literally remember, even our investors trying to poach him at some point, right? He was really effective, but he had this thing where he loves the media, and he wanted to he got a deal with I think it was Access Bank or Accelerate TV, and so every Thursday he had to go and produce some content for Accelerate TV. I remember him bringing it to me and saying, look, I will do my absolute best job, but Thursdays between morning and 10:30, or exactly maybe 11 o'clock, I have to work with their schedule, and it's my passion. I want to do this, right? And I remember myself thinking like, yeah, this guy is gonna get distracted, and then of course within 3, 6, 9 months, he's gonna come and tell me he's resigning because now it's a full-time job. And so I sat down with him, and we really talked it out and hashed it out. And he and I worked together for a few years, and it didn't impact his work whatsoever. In fact, he was working, beyond normal working hours to try and because he knew that I was giving him a big concession. He was making every effort to make sure that he doesn't let me down and there's no gaps in his work. So I think the instinctive response is usually like, sure. And I have seen employees that you do that with them and you regret that you did it. So if you're speaking to people whose companies, cut across different classes of labor and all that, what's the adjusted, reality adjusted version of that, where it's how much are you trying to give employees that sense of freedom and independence and all that versus it's a bit more top down heavy, right? And how does that impact the goal achievements in your view?
Yeah. So yeah, I know I'm speaking largely from my context, right? Which is largely the Big Four and Cowrywise, that is a very forward-thinking organization. But like I said at the beginning, a lot of things hinge on culture. And how, whether you are in HR or you are a business leader or an operations leader, I would say that HR processes are very powerful. And that's why one of my focus areas when I got to Cowrywise was not even doing HR excellently. It was helping business leaders or team leaders to do HR excellently. Because if you hire right, you're not just hiring for the person can do the job even if they are badly behaved. You are hiring for the competency, and that is not just technical. You're hiring for what they can do, what they know, and who they are, how they behave. If you hire in line with your culture, you will find that you are able to release things. You won't control every single thing. So in your case, for that person, you can trust them to take those hours on Thursday, knowing that they are going to make up for it. In fact, they probably even do more to make up for it because they feel like Seni has trusted me with this. I do not want him to regret this, and I also do not want to fail in my role. So the business has accommodated me. I have something to give back here. But I would also say that it's also a risk in the investment world, right? The risk plays a role in the reward, and that risk also plays with people. Like you said, you might take that same chance on somebody else. Everything else is in check, but the outcome is totally different. And that risk is in the behavior of that person or their ability to recognize that something has been given to me and I have to give value in return for this thing. So long and short, the risk is, I mean, so first, it depends on your culture, your industry, the nature of your work, all those play roles, but you can guide those things by how you design your processes. Do you just hire anybody because you want to hire fast and say your time to hire is 5 days? Or do you want to make sure that you're hiring somebody that clearly fits what you have defined as your need? And I'm talking about both technical and other areas of competence, but then that risk will always be there. There's no perfect system.
Cool. So I have two more questions, and I'll pause the questions, see if we have any questions from the group that's joined us today. And I think maybe one of them is a bit more controversial than the other one. So the first one is I think is a bit more straightforward, which is my fundamental belief, and I think this is just based on actual experience running operating teams. Performance management, the management in performance management is actually a critical thing. And what that means is we don't set goals and then wait to see the outcome, 6 months later. What are your rituals within the business? I'm sure it's different by manager, by team, etc. But what are some of the best practices you've seen, your rituals, where this is the cadence or the system with which managers and other people actually drive the execution with their team members? Is it they're meeting with them once a month to discuss goals, or once every 2 weeks, or is it every day 9 a.m. in the morning reports what you did yesterday? What's that cadence like?
Okay. So as much as possible, we try to make things fluid. So there's no, you must have checking with your manager every month, you must have checking with your manager every 3 months, But what you find is in the course of the work itself, people are having good conversation without having good conversations, because I mean your manager knows what you want to achieve. They see what you're doing every day. What I've also found now is that people familiarize their goals with their friends. So people who are not even your managers, even though they are not required to, they have their friends in the company as partners who know what they are trying to achieve. So I work together with you on a project, and you're giving me feedback after that project, or even maybe on the spot. Maybe I didn't get something quite well. And because our culture has been built on values that speak to how we work together, how we want to be the best and continue to grow. So when somebody is giving me feedback on, and this is not far-fetched, even HR, somebody will come to HR on Slack and say, HR, you said we should do this way. I've heard you. Did you consider this way? And this is better. And HR doesn't feel like we are the almighty HR. How can you correct us in public? Right. We keep an open mind and look at that thing and, oh yeah, this actually works. Next time we would approach this. We'll probably go to that person to have more conversations on, oh, do you have more you want to share around this? Or explore it with them and even refine what they've said we should be doing. Right.
Last question, which is maybe slightly controversial. There's two schools of thought on this one as well. And I think most people that are on this call today would be like, one school of thought says your job description is what you were hired for. And if you do what's on your job description, you've met the expectations, and your salary is tied to that. That's what you're getting paid, a salary. Now, if you happen to have a job that involves either commissions or bonuses and whatnot, again, that was already designed into your job description. So that's flat. Additional reward should only come if you have gone above what's on your job description. What's your philosophy on that? And I think the reason why I asked that question is because you mentioned earlier that these rewards actually drive that ownership and drive that sort of support the drive for execution amongst employees. So if the goal is to drive execution, and we know that rewards are linked to that spirit of ownership in some cases, what do you sit in terms of your job description is the expectation versus go above and beyond to get any rewards?
Okay, so I'll add more to the controversy. It's saying that I'll give you two answers. One as a bloody HR guy, right? One as me. Okay. I would say if you're in a system where you know that there's somebody who is noticing the value you're giving, and there's a reward that is going to come, naturally you would want to do more. So people in that system would argue that, hey, I know that there's something for doing more. But if you're in a place where everything is transactional,
Mm.
Then you might want to manage your energy
Mm.
because you want to make sure that no side is cheated.
Right. Right.
Yeah, so a bit of Cowrywise context. What we discuss here is how we're not in a transaction with our people,
Mm.
which is why people would do whatever needs to be done to get stuff done without anybody watching them, right? We say it is a deal.
Mm.
Give me value, I'll give you as much value as I can. And that's we've seen lead to a lot of motivation. So people just do things because there is value in it, either for them, for the customer. If it's just good, it should be done. So
Mm.
that's my HR answer, right? My personal answer would be whatever you do, you're doing for for yourself. If there's no reward in that place, somehow you carry that knowledge, that experience, how you've gotten better to something outside that job. It might not even be a different place that you're working. It might be in your personal life. You carry that experience to somewhere, and then you're adding value either to yourself or to other people. So for me, I'm a if you can do it, go all out, get it done. There's something for you, whether it is from that place or from somewhere else.
I think that's a very fair question. So the way I would synthesize this, discussion we just had so far, and I think everything you've touched on, and part of why I was excited when we spoke about having this session together is that I resonate with that. And I've worked at companies that have been more high performing cultures. I worked at some that were not so much, and pretty much everything you mentioned is like almost line by line, check boxes that I ticked. It requires leadership engagement. You can't have goal setting and execution and all that without leadership being involved. So if you're a CEO on this call, it's your job to have alignment there. If you're head of HR on this call, you need to go and get that executive level buy-in. And if you're an executive who's not the CEO, then you're in a pretty good position to influence the rest of the leadership team to be involved in this. Otherwise, most initiatives don't work. And I think I got off a call a few days ago with somebody who was getting quite frustrated in their job. And part of the reason why the person was frustrated is because they have all these brilliant ideas and they don't feel like they're getting executive level support. And some of the ideas the person had were, okay, maybe some of them are not, that they're not tied to the business outcomes, but there are a couple that were very much supportive of the business and they just didn't feel like the leadership was engaged in that way. So I think that's one. Then there's okay, now we're going to actually create a framework around goal setting for the company and listen properly so you can tailor it to that company's own cadence and how they operate. So you're hearing them and you're designing something that works for them, or I guess works for you in that context. The third is then have the right routines around when you're actually tracking and managing the goals and checking in and having people be held accountable to that. I guess in setting the goal itself, make sure the employee is involved in some way and being able to be part of that process so they have ownership rights. And then design the right reward system so that there's a bit of give and take, and it's not a transaction, it's a deal, like you said. So it's a negotiation almost. And I guess there's some other elements of culture that you need to embed in how you think about it, right? And I think if you look at most organizations and they tell you that, there was failure. Yes, the market situation is one, and everybody faces market situation. But if you take away the market situation and questions around, is the product actually a decent enough product that serves a need, whether it's a service business or a product business? I think these things are what kind of determines whether or not a company is able to then hit its goals versus not. So thank you very much, Ebenezer. It was a great sparring with you. I can do this all day, but let me pause and see if we have any questions from anyone that was listening in so far. I have a few more questions. I can always ask Ebenezer, but it's not meant to be a duologue. So are there any questions at all from anybody in the audience? You can either type it into the chat or you can use the hand raise button, and then we'll just take them sequentially. If there are none, I have one or two more for Eben before we wrap it up, but let's leave the space in case there are any. It's a judgment-free zone, because I know if we say that Ebenezer is doing office hours now one-on-one, I'm sure we'll get a bunch of people booking time with him to ask him questions. So maybe you don't want to be judged publicly, but it's a judgment-free, safe space. Okay, well, I guess I'll keep moving then, and I'll just ask my final. Oh, okay, I think there was one. Okay, so Karima just asked a question. Even it looks like you didn't necessarily address the situation where people did not meet their goals and they didn't have a valid excuse, a valid reason for it. and how that is managed and how that's handled. Because I think that also then drives the culture around goal achievement, right?
Oh yeah, so I thought maybe I inferred my position by speaking to the reward bit, right? So what is the reward for bad behavior in that place? In most places, if there's a bonus, people know that their performance would be a factor. It could be things around decisions, in more traditional places around maybe training. Because you did not perform up to this standard, you are not getting this. I would say that high performance cultures in most cases give freedom, but you would find that they also give reward or punishment for what is done with that freedom. The difference is just there's nobody who is monitoring you or forcing you to do things. So you feel free to own your outcome. But whether the outcome is good, then there's a reward. Whether the outcome is not good as well, then you get a negative reward. So to speak street language, the energy is matching very well. Give it to me, I give it back to you. But it has to be within how the system is designed to reward either positive behavior or negative behavior.
Yeah, and I guess maybe to double tap on that same question, that I think is a really good question by Karima, is there, if you tap the average employee that works at Cowrywise, is there a very clear consciousness that if I don't hit my goal, these are the types of things that could happen as a result of that?
Yes. And it's interesting how we've never gone out. I mean, we won't threaten people, right?
Yeah.
People just know that when I do something very well, there's a reward for it. Because someone somewhere notices that this thing has happened. So whether it is now, whether it is later, there's a reward for it. There's that conscious knowledge. So like I said, it's about that deal. It's not a transaction of I'm trying to get whatever I can get from the business. It's I want to help this business as much as possible because I know this business has got my back.
Yep. Awesome. Okay, well, look, I think in the interest of time, maybe we'll bring it to sort of towards a close. Maybe one question I have for you, Ebenezer, is in your view, how important is it for you to have, and this is not a marketing thing, because I know obviously you guys are a Talstack customer, right? I think it's a real question. And I'm asking that because I actually saw one or two people on the call today that are people that we've spoken to about, their processes internally, and they're doing things a bit manually right now. So how important do you think it is to invest in tools? And at what point does the spreadsheet and Google Forms and all that, no longer cut it for reviews and performance, for goal setting and performance reviews?
Okay, yeah, I would say that the very first chance you get, please get a tool. And this is not marketing for Talstack, but I would say that at Cowrywise, we do use Talstack. And what I've found is the value in Talstack is not just for the people who use the products or who have to do the performance review or set the goals. It's in, well, my team spend less time trying to collect different things, or it's in the reduced possibility of something getting, missed in transit or something becoming missing in transit because when HR was collating, they forgot to copy something from somewhere or they miss somebody's name. That's because you have a tool that when you're having those high-level conversations, at one or two taps, you can call things up. The leaders as well don't have to wait until HR gives them things to do. You spoke about the ongoing conversations around progress, around monitoring, right? When we are having performance reviews, my CEO doesn't have to wait for me to close the system and then start copying everybody's things and bring to him, right? He can just log in there to see the process, which also means that if I'm not a transparent person, he's able to see firsthand what's going on in the business. If I want to look into my team as well, I can, just rather than coming to depend on HR and say, hi, HR, can you give me this? Then head of HR goes to the person in charge of performance management. Hi, can you give me this for this person? And then whatever that final person gets is what has passed through different levels of communication. And then if the first person missed something, the last person misses it. So it's in that quality in terms of information flowing faster. But for me, I would say the most important value in having a system to manage something like this is how my team can save time and use that time for more mission critical things for the company. Like I said in the beginning, the company would see value. And if HR is using its time to give value, they will listen more to HR.
Well, enough said. So whether you use Talstack or somebody else, I think this is obviously a clear case that you should use something and make sure that thing allows you to focus more of your time on strategic management of people rather than collating documents and forms. And you get to a point where before you get to insights, you've kind of lost the plot already. So with that, I want to say a big thank you to Ebenezer for gracing us with your time. I know that, again, just like every other HR person I've spoken to in the last few years, you are super busy. We really appreciate it. I'm sure on behalf of everybody on the call, I want to say a big thank you. I would say that, this also is a great, it's a bit of great marketing for Cowrywise, because while I had a good sense of the Cowrywise culture and everything else, just again, sitting down and hearing you unpack some of that, it makes me feel like, yeah, maybe I should have sent my CV in for a job earlier. I want to benefit from the culture you guys have, but really, I think it's great. Thank you. And I guess to wrap up the call, there's a question we'll ask everyone. You don't have to answer the question. I think it's top of mind for everyone, which is, everything you've heard today, what is one thing that you believe you can improve in how either you or your company sets your goals and executes on those goals over the next 3 to 4 to 5 months, so that when you look back in Q2, you feel like you've actually achieved your goals, right? That's like probably the one takeaway that I would say we can go with us with. Lastly, we have an offer. Can you put the slide up real quick before we wrap? We have an offer. So the first 10 people to click on this QR code, what we'll do is we'll give you 30 days free trial on Talstack, and you pay nothing. You get 30 days for free. Try it out, see if you like it, and if you do, and you can demonstrate the ROI or the direction of ROI, then you can probably make a case for your business. You can migrate from doing things the other way to doing it our way. And if you use a different tool right now, speak to us anyway, because we've seen people migrate to us from other tools that are less modern and less friendly to employees. Let me just call it that for the sake of keeping it people on this call. But yes, otherwise, thank you again, Ebenezer. Really appreciate the time. Thank you to everybody who joined us today. It's been a pleasure having you guys here. We look forward to more sessions where we bring in real leaders, driving real initiatives, driving real impact. And we hope that your millions of Cowrywise customers will grow in multiple folds this year and the years beyond. And we hope people that are on the call today will join the ranks of Cowrywise customers as well in the near future. Thank you all so much. Have a lovely rest of the Wednesday and a lovely rest of the week ahead.
Thank you, Seni. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye all. Thank you.